Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today I'm going to show you how we make Wienerbrød or Danish pastry dough. Directly in Danish, the word actually translates to Wienerbrød, which is because the Austrians actually brought the technique for making this dough to Denmark. Fun fact. This recipe is definitely not for the faint of heart. It is one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult recipe on our website. The dough is an enriched dough that is then laminated with butter to create flaky layers. Today, I'm just gonna demonstrate the dough and the lamination and then bake off the dough into croissant shapes and swirls. Next week's video is gonna be how to make spandauer, which is one of our favorite Danish pastries. I can't keep calling everything my favorite. So if you're disappointed, don't worry, it's coming. This month is gonna be pastry month. If you wanna learn how to make this buttery flaky dough, keep on watching. It's the night before we're gonna laminate our pastry dough and shape our pastries. We do like to make this the night before to control the rise in the fridge. As with any yeasted dough, we're gonna start with our warm liquid. So this is 150 milliliters of warm water. It should be warm to the touch, but not hot. Today I'm using instant yeast, but you can also use active dry or fresh yeast. If you're in doubt on how to check if your yeast is working, you can always refer to the package instructions. I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of instant yeast to my water, along with a little bit of sugar. This recipe calls for 50 grams of sugar, so I have that measured out in this ramekin, and I'm just gonna add a little bit to the water and yeast. I've just stirred this together and now we're gonna let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes. And what we should see at the end of that time is bubbles forming on the surface and it looking a little bit foamy. And if you don't see that, your yeast probably isn't working and you should start over with new yeast. You could add a little bit more sugar just to double check. This is right after I've stirred it. And this is now 5 minutes after mixing it together. All right, I have a mixing bowl and this is what I'm gonna use to combine the ingredients for the dough. I am gonna knead by hand today and not use my mixer. In this bowl, I'm gonna add in the rest of the sugar that I had measured out. As a reminder, was 50 grams total and a little bit went into the yeast mixture. 2 large eggs and a teaspoon of salt. And the yeast mixture that we have here, and then we're gonna mix it all together. Okay, this yeast is going crazy. The last thing going into the dough tonight is 360 grams of all-purpose flour. I'm gonna add this to my liquid ingredients while slowly stirring, just making sure all the flour is getting incorporated, and then eventually I'll start kneading it. Now that we've gotten to this stage, I'm going to start kneading with clean hands and just have a little bit of extra flour on the side if I need to add it, if it continues to be super sticky. You can also do this on a surface. I just like to keep it in the bowl. All right, I've been kneading for 3 to 5 minutes. And all of the flour in the dough has been incorporated. It's definitely still somewhat sticky, but that's totally fine. It's gonna develop more gluten as it sits in the fridge overnight. Now I'm gonna cover our lovely dough so that it's ready to go for tomorrow. I'm putting on this lid that goes with my bowl, but you can also put plastic wrap on or a dish towel. All right, this is going in the fridge for 8 to 12 hours, so see you tomorrow morning. It's the next morning. My dough's been sitting in the fridge overnight. At this stage, it should definitely look like it's expanded in size. It's probably around doubled. Since this is super cold from the fridge right now, I'm gonna set it to the side for around 30 to 45 minutes. So let me cover this back up and set it aside. While that's warming up slightly, we're gonna prepare our butter for the lamination. It is important to use a high fat percentage butter for this. Usually they will be labeled as European style butters. This, for example, is 85% butter fat. It's best if you use one that's at least 83% butter fat. And I am also using unsalted butter. With the butter, we're going to make a butter block which is basically just a large square of butter that we can encase in our dough to laminate it. I'm gonna start by measuring out 325 grams of butter. I am just gonna lay down a piece of plastic wrap over my scale, like that. Oh, and my butter has been sitting out for around 10 minutes from the fridge, so it's still definitely cold, but it's not fridge cold right now. And you also don't want it to be super soft. Now we have our butter with a sheet of plastic wrap underneath it, and we're gonna add another layer on top. You can also use parchment paper for this. The plastic wrap is just so that we can roll the butter out and make one even block without getting butter all over the rolling pin. And the goal here is to get rid of the seams of the pieces of butter. And we're aiming for a square of butter around 6 by 6 inches. So I'm just gonna start by rolling it. It can help to press it like this at first. I've rolled this out, it's about 1 foot long, and what we're gonna do now is take off the top layer of plastic wrap, and then I'm gonna fold up the bottom third, and then the top third over the bottom, and then I'm gonna take this block of butter and rotate it 90 degrees. And now, because I can still see a few seam lines, I'm gonna repeat the process by putting a piece of plastic wrap back over the top and rolling it out again. All right, and I'm repeating the fold. Now I'm gonna work on shaping it into a 6-inch by 6-inch block. The easiest way to do this at this point is honestly to just shape it with your hands, and then at the end, roll it with the rolling pin to get it nice and flat. All right, here's our 6-inch by 6-inch square of butter. I'm just gonna pop this back in the fridge for 5 to 10 minutes just to firm up slightly. It is now time to start laminating our dough. This has been sitting out for around 30 to 40 minutes. It's not quite as cold as fridge temperature, which is good. I have some extra flour here on the side, and I'm going to flour my surface and turn the dough out. Now that the dough is out, I'm going to put it down and then shape it into a rectangle that's roughly 8 inches by 8 inches. Now, we can't forget about our block of butter. This was in the fridge for around 5 to 10 minutes, so it has firmed up, but it's still plenty pliable. And I'm placing it on a diagonal so that the corners of the butter touch the edges of our dough. All right, and then now we're going to pull up our corners of the dough over the top of the butter and pinch all of the edges together so that the butter is encased in the dough. And now I'm gonna turn this 45 degrees. All right, I'm pretty happy with this. We're about to start the rolling out process, and now's a good time to just take a deep breath. If you ever find yourself getting frustrated or the dough is not really rolling out very well, just leaving it to rest for 10 to 15 minutes and coming back to it can sometimes help tremendously. I have my dough and extra flour here because you really don't want anything to stick to the top or anything to stick to the bottom. So I'm just gonna sprinkle a little bit of flour on the top. And then we're gonna roll out the dough into a rectangle that's at least 16 inches long. And the best way to do this is just be gentle with the rolling pin. I'm really barely putting any pressure on the rolling pin here. If you do think that the dough is sticking to the top or to the bottom, just make sure to keep adding more flour. All right, this is looking pretty good to me. And now we're gonna do our first fold. I'm just gonna lift it up and fold it over the middle. Just brush off any of the excess flour that you might see on the bottom. We're gonna fold down the top third. And now we're gonna take some plastic wrap and wrap this up. This dough is gonna go in the fridge for 15 minutes, and then I'm gonna take it out and let it rest at room temperature for 10 minutes. All right, it's time for round 2 of the lamination. So reflour it. Just making sure that you're putting it down so like it's a long rectangle in front of you, meaning like the folded part is at the top and bottom, so that when we roll it out, we're folding it at a 90-degree angle to the way we folded it before. We're gonna repeat the same process as last time, so rolling this out to at least 16 inches in length. Then we're gonna fold the bottom third over the middle third and the top third over the bottom third. You also might see a few air bubbles. Just don't pop them. You don't wanna create any holes in the surface. Oh, and if you ever do get a hole in the dough and you can see butter, that has happened to me before. Just add some flour on top and then try to keep rolling it out, and it'll most likely be fine. Heading back in the fridge for another 15 minutes and then room temperature for 10 to 15 minutes. All right, we're back to do the last lamination of the dough. And like last time, we want to make sure we can see the folded part on the top and the bottom, making sure there's enough flour on the surface. Now this is going in the fridge for 15 minutes for its last rest, and then 10 minutes room temperature. Our dough has rested in the fridge, and now it's time to roll it out. At this stage, you can start following the directions for any of our Danish pastry recipes that use this dough. For today, I'm going to demonstrate with this dough just how to make croissants and swirls. I'm going to prepare my surface like before with flour. And I did clean the surface just to make sure there weren't any pieces stuck down or anything, so totally clean slate. And for this, I'm gonna roll it out to at least somewhere between 16 and 20 inches in length. When I get to that, I'm gonna cut it in half so that it's much easier to work with, and then set that other part aside in the fridge while I work with half of it. But I'm gonna wrap this half up and come back to it when I'm done with the other half. Now we're rolling it out. I'm going for between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch here in thickness. This is a good thickness for me, so now I'm going to trim the edges so that it's a nice rectangle. So trimmed up, this is now around 9 by 13.5 to 14 inches in size. I'm going for 6 croissants and 3 swirls, and that's all gonna go on one baking tray. Measure this out first. All right, and then actually cut the triangles. It's best to divide this into 3 different sections. So 1/3 of the way down, I'm just gonna mark it, and I'm pressing very gently with my knife. And then another 1/3 of the way down. And then what you wanna do is just cut diagonally across. I have my guidelines, so now I'm gonna actually cut it. Now I have the strip of dough, and I'm just gonna roll it up until you get to a little swirl. So I'm just gonna set these on the side for now and then transfer them to the baking tray later. Okay, and then for the triangles, I'm gonna cut out my guideline, kind of stretch it a little bit so it's more of an isosceles triangle. We're gonna roll it up from the long side towards the point. All right, and then you should have a little croissant shape. I have a baking tray lined with a sheet of parchment paper. I'm going to transfer my shaped pastries over to the tray. Now that they're on the tray, I'm gonna fix the tails of both the croissants and the swirls just by taking a little bit of water on my finger, on a clean finger, and then putting a little bit on the inside of the tail and then sticking it to the edge. Oh, and the other thing I'm doing is making sure that these croissants have the tails underneath. Now I'm covering this with some plastic wrap. All right, these are wrapped up. I'm gonna set them aside because guess what? That was only half the dough. So we're gonna repeat with the other half. Off we go again. Covering this one in plastic wrap as well. Both trays are ready for their proof. This is probably 15-20 minutes ahead of the second tray, which is totally fine because I like to bake these off one at a time. Here's the thing about proofing laminated yeasted dough. It can take a very long time. These are the pastries before they've proofed, and then I'll show you after when they are ready to go and let you know how long it's been. I'm guessing it's gonna take at least 2 hours. And the reason we wanna be so precise about the proofing is that if they are underproofed, the butter will leak out. But anyway, I'll check back in probably 2 hours and show you where the pastries are at. About 20 minutes before the pastries are done rising, we're gonna preheat our oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, it's been probably 2.5 hours, so we're gonna take a look at the first tray of pastries that we prepared. Okay, so you can definitely see that they've expanded quite a bit, which is great. It's what we're looking for. So they should be really, really puffy, and if I just touch it, it should wiggle back and forth. Hopefully you can see that. Before these go in the oven, we're gonna egg wash them. An egg wash is 1 egg with a little bit of water whisked together, and then we're going to brush it on with a pastry brush. With every step of this dough, the key here has been to be quite gentle, so I'm just very lightly brushing the egg wash on top. These are egg washed. We're gonna bake them in the center rack for 15 minutes. Ovens can vary in temperature from the top to the bottom and from side to side a lot, so I just like to keep these in the middle and bake off the trays one at a time. So the second tray will go in when these are done. The first batch of pastries have a few minutes left, so now we're gonna egg wash our second tray. I'll just show again how much these have expanded. They are very light and airy. All right, first batch is out, so let's do a little swap with the second batch going in the oven now. All right, let's take a closer look at this first batch. So I have these still on the baking tray just to show that there is very little butter leakage, and that means that the proofing was pretty good on this batch. The other thing that we're looking for is not a lot of gaps in the pastry, because gaps usually mean that that is where the butter leaked out. So even in the spirals, you can see pretty good adhesion and not a lot of big gaps. All right, a video wouldn't be complete without at least trying it. so buttery, very flaky. Thank you so much for watching our video. We hope you try to make Danish pastry dough. It is well worth the effort. Stay tuned for the next video because we'll show you how to make a real Danish pastry. Bye.